friend of mine called me on the phone and said, the state's having a sale of old marble. Would you like to come and look at it? So we went over there, and he bought me a big pile of marble in exchange for me making him a head for his garden. And so my first experience carving marble was with a sharpened screwdriver and a hammer, and I carved him a head for his garden. But I liked, this is Vermont marble, and this was rubble left over from the addition of the wings to the Capitol. And Norma Paulus was presiding at that point over the Historical Properties Commission or Committee. And she had this marble sale, and this was the way they raised funds to do just what you folks are doing, and to purchase portraits. Anyway, out of that came the idea that I should make Mark Hatfield's portrait. They called me and asked me if I would look into it, and I did, and so we arrived at a price which was too little, but which I met the deadline for the price, and there it is. While I sat with Mark Hatfield and measured his face, and we discussed authors in common, what I do remember is that at the time I thought his mother's influence was so great, and I thought that was a positive thing, and I think people can spin that negatively. But at that time I thought that connection, that maternal connection, was strong enough that I wanted to include that connection in the narrative of his bust. And originally, I had designed designed the piece so that this pillar was sitting in a dish, and I wanted it to be, a dish of his mother's china, and I actually got the dish of his mother's china to duplicate. As it turned out, this marble is very old, and it was having a really hard time holding the detail I wanted to give it, and I couldn't get it to hold the rim of a dish standing out and proud of the surface, so I had to leave that part out. I tried to make the composition speak for what I learned, at least about the public man, that I think Senator Hatfield is an authentic scholar, and I think he's authentically a scholar. I think he has read a lot, and I think he has the breadth of mind to incorporate what he learns into his own larger picture. So that's where the books come from. I'm sad that I didn't get to hold on to the plate, because in years to come that would be very interesting. That would be something that would be nonsensical, and someone might discover later, and it might add depth to the piece. As a sculptor, you have a visual vocabulary, and a lot of things are shaped like other things. You learn this vocabulary of shapes and intersections. Well, at the time, the whole vocabulary around a shirt and tie and lapel was completely foreign to me. And it's a new vocabulary for me. I was good at faces and nude bodies, and so I had these pictures of this lapel, and I had no sports jacket or tie or shirt in my personal wardrobe. And at the time, one of the obvious people, and one of the only people I really knew and was friends with, was David Roten, who had, a selection of suits and ties. So I'm working on Senator Hatfield's bust late at night, and I'm at these things, and there's some questions I had to solve. So I call up David and drag him out of bed. He went straight to his wardrobe and pulled out a shirt and jacket and tie, and sat on a stool in his kitchen and modeled for an hour and a half's worth of drawings while I explored all those shapes. We had to put Senator Hatfield's head on it. And actually there were troubles. There were passages in the stone that were having a really hard time holding detail. Old marble that sits out for a long time begins to rot. And this piece of stone had aged to the point where there were some fragile areas. And I couldn't, I just couldn't hold on to as much depth of detail in certain areas that I wanted to. So I didn't get, for instance, I didn't get quite the power out of his eyes that I had intended to, because I really couldn't undercut the eyelid as much as I'd hoped. And that gets those dark lines, but it would it would have fallen away if I tried to undercut it, and I couldn't have that. So I struggled hard. It was a big responsibility. I wanted to do a good job, and I worked really hard at it. I knew I was equal to it. I'd done similar things before in stone and in wood. And what was his reaction? He was very polite. He took my hands and looked at my hands and said, well, now and felt my hands and wanted to feel the hands of someone that carved stone. He was curious about that. I think he liked it. At the onset, there was some trepidation on the part of Jerry Frank, who didn't want to trust the task to me and I think he wanted to hire someone out of New York, or someone that was a lot more proven than me. In the end, I think they knew they got a decent job. And I think that everyone is probably satisfied, although none of the principal parties involved have ever contacted me since. So I don't really know.